Hello, everybody, and warm welcome to the Sephirah Center of Shamanism. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It is my honor to welcome you to my YouTube channel, whereby we break down the ancient technologies of both shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the modern psychology and deep psyche. Today, we're going to be discussing the subject of dark matter alchemy and ascent. We're going to be delving into some of the different ways that you can interact with dark matter energy from a healing and evolutionary standpoint. We're going to be looking at dark matter energy from the perspective of trauma integration, as well as power and soul retrieval. And most importantly, we're going to be looking at some of the benefits of interacting with dark matter alchemy and ascent. This is going to be an important video for anybody who is intrigued about the darker occult sciences from the perspective of initiation and invocation. So I highly recommend staying tuned. So dark matter alchemy is a concept which triggers fear for many people purely because it is the exact thing that we have been wired to avoid. We need to avoid dark energy. Dark matter is bad. It only flows towards you to make you more vulnerable and things like that. The whole current, or should I say share of currents of energy, are extremely misunderstood. We are talking about the most controversial form of self-development, but also one of the most ancient forms of self-development as well. When we refer to dark matter alchemy and ascent, we are referring to a deep primal form of self-development and the interaction with primordial forces that are realistically older than form itself. We are interacting with intelligences that are extraterrestrial in nature, as they are not from this realm of creation in any way, shape, or form, but actually dwell outside of creation itself. What is dark matter alchemy exactly? Dark matter alchemy is the process of interacting with negatively polarized entities, negatively polarized currents, in order to download and become more like these currents of energy, to download their qualities into your nervous system, into your energy field, so that you can find the medicine that exists within their current of energy. When we talk about dark matter energy, we are not referring to energy which is sent from malicious intent. This is what I call trauma-induced projection, and this is not what dark matter alchemy is about. Once you break through all of that plastic of needing to curse and needing to have power over everyone and all of that total rubbish, you get to a very solid form of self-development that is far more direct, much quicker to work, and realistically far more powerful than anything that you will interact with from the perspective of alchemical attainment. Don't get me wrong, one method of alchemy is not better or more effective than another. I'm not saying that dark matter is better than anything else. I'm not saying that, say, demonic spirits are more effective to work with than angelic spirits. I think we need to work with both and have a balance of both within our lives to really understand the polarities and how to really balance them within us. But we are interacting with forces that are pretty aggressive, pretty chaotic, and are far more tangible than the light matter energies, purely because we are interacting with forces that are resonating with your deep unconscious. So the synchronicities that are going to be created within your day-to-day life as a result of interacting with such energies are going to be far more significant. So there are many different ways that you can interact with dark matter energy and be exposed to the alchemy that it has to offer. The most direct way, or should I say one of the most direct ways, is through the invocation of a dark matter spirit. An example of a dark matter spirit would be Lilith, would be Hecate, would be Lucifer, would be Beelzebub, would be some of the Goetia, Marbas, Vale 4, Asmodeus, those types of spirits that are vampiric in nature. And again, vampiric doesn't mean bad, it just means that they are raw expressions of the dark feminine. When you first interact with these currents of energy, it may be a bit of a shock, first and foremost, okay? This is why it's good to ease yourself in gradually and realistically, read about it, do research and really find out whether it is for you, because you're going to most likely be pulled into a much bigger process than what you are able to consciously perceive at this moment in time. I myself started with a very intense spirit, and that is Beelzebub. I just jumped straight to Beelzebub, not really knowing what I was really getting myself in for. And Beelzebub showed me his power within the space of 2 invocations. I invoked him twice, and then he was basically in my nervous system constantly for the next 2 months. Okay, because we are working with very dense energies, this doesn't mean low vibrational energies. In fact, they are an incredibly high vibration, actually operating on the same level as angels, so the 6th and 7th dimension. But because they are dark matter in nature, the energy feels far more tangible and far more dense. So I invoked Beelzebub, casted a circle for the first time, invoked Beelzebub. The energy was present immediately. I chant the N like once, which is the chant that you use to pull the spirit into your body. I chant the N once, and then literally like a waterfall, the consciousness is like into my being, and my connection with the spirit starts to build incredibly quickly. First and foremost, my system was not prepared for such an endeavor. I did do a lot of research, but again, I say do your research, but realistically, there's not much that can prepare you for interacting with these types of spirits. This spirit felt so incredibly tangible and was particularly present at night as well, would deliberately overstep my boundaries to get me to put more boundaries in, both with myself and with other people. When I say the energies were intense at night, I mean I would lie in bed and this spirit would literally be stroking me in the bed in that respect. And I'd get the sensation of just such a dense energy around my head. At times I'd get like an explosion like sensation from within it felt like my brain was exploding or something like that. One night I did also put the sigil under the pillow, and that was incredibly overwhelming. It was literally like the whole of the underworld had opened within my bedroom, and like there's things flying around everywhere. It's just a dense sort of like tornado like energy coming down. I never thought that I was this psychically perceptive until I started interacting with this spirit, in this case Beelzebub. So the point being is that just working with one of these spirits, just with a couple of invocations, kick-started a huge alchemical process for my nervous system. And for a good few months after, my system was so incredibly overstimulated. I was feeling the sensations constantly. I would go to sleep, the sensations would be there in the dreams. I'd wake up, the sensations would still be there whilst I've woken up, to the point where literally like my eyes would shake. Like I remember being on the phone to my partner and like being on the phone and then just staring, whilst talking to her on the phone, and then my eyes were shaking. Like the sensations within my nervous system were so intense to the point where my eyes were literally shaking, and this was after the invocation of one spirit. Eventually, I did ground the energy. Okay, I did start grounding the energy eventually, and it started to shift the kind of illusions that I had around these particular spirits in general. This was my journey with interacting with my first spirit. I'm not saying that your experience is going to be the same, but the point that I'm really making is that if you haven't interacted with dark matter energies before, then the energy can be a bit of a shock to your nervous system. The reason for that is because your energy field by default is operating more in alignment with what you call the positive polarity, which is the light matter polarity, the emanating qualities of the angels, realistically, because we exist within a positively polarized multiverse. We live in a multiverse which is like matter in nature, in a multiverse of form. So that means that your nervous system and energy body is wired to kind of fit into that environment. Okay, whereas when you're interacting with a dark matter energy, you're interacting with a force that is actually outside of creation itself and is purely self-sustaining. So when you start to interact with such a spirit through invocation, which is actually bringing the force of energy, the current of energy down into your body, into your nervous system to be exposed to its alchemy, you are experiencing a current of energy that is actually flowing in the opposite direction to what your energy body is naturally wired to actually, or how your energy body and nervous system is wired to function. So what will happen is that discord will start to be sowed into your nervous system, and it will cause a kind of two-way process that happens. On one hand, you'll be bringing the energy in, but on the other hand, the energy will be sowing discord into your nervous system and releasing crystallized emotions that have become stuck within the nervous system. So that's why working with such spirits and such currents of energy can very quickly release a lot of trauma and bring a lot of trauma up to the surface in realistically quite a physical way, because literally you're interacting with a current of energy that is operating at the opposite polarity to what your energy system is used to by default. And that means that your energy field is then going to start to adjust. It's going to become what you could call darker in nature, more negatively polarized in nature, the more you interact with these types of spirits. And in doing so, your nervous system is going to change the way that it works and functions, and you're going to become more open and vulnerable purely because you're interacting with forces that you could say act as archetypes that have access to deeper portions of your unconscious mind. So when you interact with a negatively polarized spirit, such as Beelzebub, and I didn't realize at the time that Beelzebub was literally extremely high in the hierarchy. We're talking about the second to top sphere within the Qliphothic tree here, Gagiel. I had no idea that this spirit was even a part of that particular structure at this moment in time. So I was interacting with this spirit, which is incredibly negative in nature. Again, not bad, just negative energy. So the opposite to what my nervous system was used to. So it caused a big reaction within my nervous system that over time was actually extremely beneficial. I didn't realize that I was actually being prepared for a much bigger process of Qliphothic initiation, even though at the time I was like, I'm definitely not going to go through that. Even though a part of me was like, yes, you are. You're definitely going to do that. And then another part of me was like, no, I'm not. I'm never going to do that. But long story short, I ended up initiating, and I feel like those initial invocations were basically preparing me to go through that experience. Okay. So when we are interacting with spirits via invocation, it is a very direct way of bringing that consciousness into your field. It creates a merging with your consciousness and induces a state of being which you could call partial possession, which is where you enter into an altered state of consciousness, a state of trance, whilst sort of under the energetic influence of that spirit. Okay, and just simply interacting with that energy, it's incredibly easy to do an invocation. Just interacting with those energies using the invocation methods is one of the most direct ways that you can basically gain access to the alchemy of that spirit. The other way that is also incredibly direct is Qliphothic initiation. Okay, and Qliphothic initiation is one that does change the way that your body functions in general. I think as soon as you start engaging with Qliphothic energies, you will feel that your body starts to change in terms of its sensations, because you are literally going in to these initiatory systems and you're interacting and actually merging with some of the darkest forces within the cosmos. You are then going to emanate those energies. Okay, so you interact with the different Qliphothic spheres. You are going to essentially absorb those energies into your field and your whole body is then going to adjust to that energy. So working with dark matter in the form of initiation is a very direct way to gain access to its potential and energy and alchemy and ascent and power and many other things, but you're going to be changing the way that your nervous system functions, and in a sense you will become, in a sense, like a different type of being in general, purely because you are opening up different portions of your nervous system, and you are basically making the commitment to become vulnerable, to become more vulnerable, to become more open, and ultimately to expose the illusions within your day-to-day life, the illusions that you've created specifically to encase your full potential. So the Qliphoth is a series of spheres and tunnels that you initiate through one by one, and each one results in a significant transmutation process, a significant transmogrification through that given realm that causes you to then gain access to the deeper portions of power that dwell within your nervous system and dwell within your unconscious mind, realistically speaking. But that's something that you need to feel into and really decide whether it's something that you want, because once you're in that process of initiation, you're never going to hear the end of it, first and foremost. But I will make a separate video on the Qliphoth at some stage when I feel that I'm able to give an accurate description of the different stages of the initiation. So you've got invocation, which is a very direct way to interact with the given spirit or a specific spirit. You've got initiation. Those are probably the two most direct ways. And then you've got evocation, which is the process of bringing the spirit into the space, but not actually merging with the spirit itself. Okay, so what I would say is that be careful with the different evocation methods. Make sure it is humane and respectful to the spirit. Don't be doing the lesser key of Solomon method, which is to stand within a very specifically protected circle and force the energy into the space, because that's not going to end well. You want to approach such spirits with humility and respect. These are spirits that demand respect. If you respect them, they will ultimately respect you. Okay, so approaching them as allies, approaching them as aspects of you, accepting them as aspects of you through invocation or through initiation is essentially some of the most direct ways that you can utilize to actually alchemize your system using dark matter energy. So what are the benefits of interacting with dark matter energy? What are the real benefits of undergoing dark matter induced alchemical ascent? You're probably wondering this at this point. If you're interacting with these types of energy, it's bringing up all of this repressed trauma. What are the benefits? And the truth is that the benefits are many, too many to count. These energies alter your body chemistry, alter the chemistry of your nervous system and your energy field so significantly that it can't actually be quantified by human language in any way, shape, or form. But I can list some of the main benefits that I have noticed within my process. First and foremost, you build a very strong, intimate connection with your shadow self, and in doing so, you gain more of a connection to your inner child. Okay, so if you're approaching such energies from the perspective of self-development and wanting to get to know yourself better, which is what they are there for, then it offers a very direct and realistically quite quick path in the grand scheme of things. When I say quick, it's not overnight. You're never going to get to the end of it. It's not about getting to one place specifically and that's it done. But what I'm saying is that they have a very quick mechanism of action. So as soon as you start interacting with them, you're exposed to their alchemy. I just started reading the book, Complete Book of Demonolatry by S. Connolly, and even just reading that book was opening me up to the alchemy, even though I wasn't doing any invocations in that regard. So ultimately, they do offer a very quick route to self-development. So one of the core benefits is shadow integration and the integration of the inner child, which will allow you to become more vulnerable with yourself and vulnerable with other people. In doing so, you will be able to hold your inner child, surrender to the inner child, and ultimately use that current of energy to open your heart and allow yourself to be guided by your truth and authenticity. So these spirits and currents of energy give you very direct access to the forces that can deconstruct your blockages towards really connecting with some of your deeper feelings and emotions. Okay, so it is a very direct method of shadow work, but in my experience, it is the ultimate method of shadow work. Nothing else has really compared to it for me personally, purely because you're literally going to these archetypes or going to these realms. If you were to enter something like the Cliffoth and you're actually saying, I want to merge with you, then you are basically performing a huge soul retrieval, a huge process of retrieving your true innocence, a huge process of retrieving your true power, and automatically you will integrate the inner child parts that actually dwell within these different portions of your psyche, ultimately. It does require a lot of work when it comes to this level of self-development. I'm not saying that it's easy. It is one of the most difficult forms of self-development, but if you relax into it and just allow it to happen, and you just take it as it comes and don't resist it, and more than anything, do not fight the spirits, then you are going to be exposed to a significant amount of healing and self-development from the perspective of inner child work, inner child integration, trauma integration, and ultimately shadow integration. And you are going to become more whole and get to know yourself better, as that is all these energies really are. They are forces that are going to deconstruct the illusions, take away your illusions of suppression, so that you can ultimately get to know yourself better. Let's not overcomplicate it. They're there to help you grow towards your truth, and what your truth is so much more than what you are able to really comprehend. So as soon as you interact with these energies, you will probably feel that dissolving process, and you will feel your consciousness expanding significantly. And that leads me on to another benefit: significant expansion of consciousness and development of wisdom. When you are interacting with forces that are deconstructing your false self, and in a sense, they are kind of eating your false self. That's how I kind of see it. Okay, the false self is not actually you. Okay, it's the illusions that have been created to encase the real you in that regard. So in a sense, when you're interacting with these energies, it kind of feels like that those older layers are kind of being eaten or dissolved by these given spirits. And in doing so, your consciousness is going to expand. Okay, because it's a bit like you're setting yourself free from a predefined prison that you have been placed in either by yourself or by the projected restriction of the external world. So you start interacting with them and you will feel a big expansion in consciousness. You will feel your awareness starting to develop. And more than anything, you'll start to generate wisdom about what the darkness actually is about, and understand truly that the darkness is not the evil thing, realistically. And then you start to gain gnosis into how our world is pretty inverted in the way that it works, and how our world actually views the forces that are really here to help us get to know ourselves and help us find our true potential. You really understand on a deep cellular level that our world has been wired specifically to suppress these different aspects of the self. And this is a very powerful process of revelation, but it can be an intense one, because you start to come to terms with the fact, as your consciousness expands through the dark matter alchemy, you start to come to terms with how many times you have lied to yourself unconsciously without actually realizing it fully. Okay, so the expansion of consciousness that comes from it is significant. The other is psychic protection. Okay, because you are integrating your shadow at such a significant level and you are actively interacting with dark matter energies, your field will then process dark matter energy in a much more helpful and effective way. In a sense, you are training your energy body to be able to hold large quantities of dark matter energy and not be harmed by it, essentially. So as you're interacting with these spirits, you are going to essentially undergo a level of alchemy that will change the way that your body processes intrusive energies as a whole. You won't be trying to escape intrusive entities if you use them in the right way. Yeah, you will ultimately change how you look at the concept of heavy energy. If you're somebody who is empathic, who takes on a lot of energy from people, then, working with these types of energies are really going to encourage you to serve yourself. And in doing so, they are going to change the way that your energy body and your nervous system metabolizes different energy. And you could say that this is a form of co-creative psychic vampirism. Okay, in a sense, you are learning to vampirize dark matter energy and utilize it for transformation in that respect. Utilize it for your own transformation. Now, when I say vampirism, I personally am not referring to siphoning energy from anybody else. I don't do that sort of thing personally in that regard. But what I'm referring to here is actually learning how to process dark matter energy in a sustainable way, process dark matter energy in a way that is actually going to be helpful for your system instead of harmful. Whereas the New Age, for example, the love and light community is wired to just, oh, we need to avoid dark matter energy. We need to remove it. We need to protect ourselves from intrusive energies. But when you are interacting with forces and are being exposed to the alchemical ascent of forces that are literally resonant with your deep unconscious and are resonant with the deepest portions of dark matter energy, then you are going to realize that you have nothing to fear, that nothing outside of you is realistically going to harm you in that respect, because you are going to be interacting with the literal archetypes that mirror the deepest portions of your shadow. And when you go through that integration process, your psychic protection will be automatic in that regard. Your psychic protection will be automatic. The way that you process projected energies will change. The way that you process different types of projection, different types of intrusive entities, even astral parasites. The way that your system deals with these types of things will change, and you will learn to actually vampirize those kinds of energies. So even if somebody was to say project an energy towards you, your system will then be able to magnetize that energy in and actually utilize it for its own transformation and alchemy instead of actually being harmed by it. So when you're interacting with, say, a demonic spirit, you are downloading a direct current of energy that is so resonant with your deep unconscious, and realistically, intrusive energies come into your field and come into your body, into your nervous system as an expression of your deep psyche. So if you are already interacting with the deeper portions of your psyche, then realistically speaking, they're going to have no reason to attach to you. And if you are approaching them from the perspective of all is within, I've experienced it where an intrusive energy can come in and you can literally alchemize it from the inside out. That intrusive entity or energy or psychic attack, whatever it is, actually gets pulled into the system and gets metabolized by the system. And it's then used as a tool to help your system build in strength and in resilience. So you become extremely resilient to dark matter energy in general, and it will actually change the way that you view dark energy as a whole, purely because you are basically training your system to hold large amounts of cosmic energy. Bearing in mind that we are working with forces that are multidimensional in nature, but are also incredibly dense in nature. So if you can train your system to be able to hold large quantities of dark matter energy, then you are going to be able to process and handle a lot, both within the material world and within the energetic plane, realistically speaking. Another core benefit is ultimately growing towards your soul's evolutionary path. When you go through that deconstruction phase, you will start to realize what is sustainable for your soul's evolution and what isn't. You will start to serve yourself. Okay, and serving yourself is something which is seen as purely selfish. Okay, but it's not. Okay, if you are operating from martyrhood and you are operating from serving others too much, you are going to attract people into your life that are going to prey off of that martyrhood in that respect. You're going to attract people into your life that are going to want to vampirize that martyrhood. Whereas if you are serving yourself, you are going to attract more co-creative dynamics into your reality. You're going to attract more co-creative dynamics into your life that are going to mirror that service to self element, ultimately. So as you learn to serve yourself, you are learning to forge your own path and find what is right for you within this world without the influence of anybody else. In that respect, you really start to come to terms with how controlled the external world really is, and how even a lot of spiritual teachers are deliberately trying to keep their students beneath where they are. And you start to really develop the headspace as to, like, if you really work with these energies intensely, you really start to develop the headspace of, like, I am really going to do what I do for me in that respect. And even if it involves being in service to others, when you develop that, you could call more daemonic quality of serving yourself, you are going to attract people that are more in service to themselves in that respect. And therefore, those dynamics are going to be more reciprocal. Two people that come together, say a relationship, that are understanding their needs and are ready to serve themselves, are going to be a hell of a lot more. It's going to be a hell of a lot more of a co-creative relationship than a martyr and a narcissist, yeah, or martyr, need and need in that respect, yeah. Two people who are in their power come together, they are going to then feed each other's fire, and then they are going to grow together in that union, ultimately. Yeah. The other thing is really understanding your deeper, more repressed portions of your psyche. I'm talking specifically here about perversions, okay? Particularly demonic spirits, they are not afraid to bring up some of your most repressed perversions to be integrated. It can be uncomfortable, but when you integrate them, you gain a much stronger connection to your own personal sexuality and your own sensuality as a whole, and that will significantly enhance your intimacy with the world around you. It will significantly enhance your intimacy, say, with your partner, or it will affect your ability to attract the right partner in that is actually matching where you are and that is actually growing with you ultimately. So gaining access to the currents that are going to ultimately hold dominion over the portions of your unconscious mind that hold your perversions have a huge potential for integration in that area. And as you do so, you really realize that the only thing that we are fearing and that we are projecting into the external world is the fear of our own shadow, realistically. The demonic spirits, for me, have really brought the perspective of all is within, and that if there is a fear of something external, particularly of an external person or of an external energy, then that is a projection of my own unconscious mind, realistically speaking. But that's something which is incredibly personal, and it will be highly individual according to you. The other is really just gaining access to knowledge around how magnetism really works within your reality. Understanding that through access to these deeper portions of your unconscious mind, you're gaining access to the literal portions that are responsible for pulling in specific realities, whether it's for your evolutionary purpose or whether it's something that you want or desire ultimately. So working with dark matter energy will help you to understand the darker aspects of abundance and manifestation so that you can then start to explore your self-doubts on a much more clear and in a much more clear and crisp way so that you can then start to actively cultivate your reality. As I mentioned in a previous video, it starts, any alchemical ascent starts with high magic, doing it for evolution. So if you're going into working with dark matter alchemy and ascent, start with the high magic. Go into it to evolve. Go into it to get to know yourself better because they love that. Yeah, those spirits absolutely love that because what they're getting energy from is your evolutionary potential. Okay, dark matter spirits, they exist outside of the multiverse, they sustain themselves, so they are going to be incredibly responsive if you are committed to your evolutionary path. And as you do so, you'll get to know yourself on a deeper level. You'll get to know your limitations. You'll get to know your failings. You will get to know your wounds on a deeper level. And as you integrate those wounds, integrate the repressed aspects of yourself through the use of dark matter alchemy and interaction with dark matter spirits, then you are naturally going to become more adept at pulling in the reality that you want. You are naturally going to become more adept at what you could call low magical practice, which is the more surface level stuff, such as money, such as love, such as intimacy, those types of things. So it will start with the high magic. That's the best way to start. Go into it from the perspective of really evolving and growing as a person, and then ultimately that will start to pull down to the more material level of consciousness because you are going into the foundations of your reality. You could say that negatively polarized spirits have access to the collective unconscious, which is also known as the formative plane, which is the place where possibility descends into from the causal planes, from the higher dimensions, in order to take form before it manifests within physical, tangible experience. So technically what you're doing by going into your deep subconscious and understanding yourself on a deeper level through dark matter alchemy is that you are gaining more paradoxical control over what it is that manifests within your reality by building your relationship with some of the most chaotic forces in the cosmos. And Cliffothic initiation is ultimately going to be a much more direct route into those different portions of your psyche and are absolutely going to bring things to the surface that you didn't even know existed and is ultimately going to make you face things that you do not want to face. And it can be extremely unpredictable. Okay, that's one thing to bear in mind. These energies in the wrong hands can be potentially dangerous. Okay, and a lot of the, as I mentioned in my Black Magic video, a lot of the occult community are operating from a traumatized space. So as long as you are going into it from the perspective of, realistically bettering yourself and evolving, getting to know yourself better and being willing to look at your shadow and go into your trauma and grow ultimately as a person, then as long as you have those bases covered, then you should be fine. But if you have not done any shadow work before, if you are new to trauma integration as a whole, then you know, you can still interact with certain spirits. It can be a good place to start. It's not for me to tell you what's a good place to start and what isn't. But what I would personally recommend is having experience in trauma work, integration, and maybe even some alchemical processes first before going straight into full-on invocation, because it will change your life if you interact with it properly. It will change your life in a very significant way, but it will also open you up to a much bigger alchemical process that you are not able to see. Okay, and because these spirits are extremely dissolving in nature, if you are in a place where you are feeling extremely vulnerable or you're not grounded, then this is where they can potentially cause psychosis, realistically speaking. Psychosis in the sense of deconstructing your sense of self, but realistically then deconstructing your grounding. And then, all of a sudden you're bouncing off the walls, not knowing which way is up. Okay, so we are talking about a very powerful, probably the most powerful form of alchemical ascent and transformation, but also one of the most dangerous if it falls into the wrong hands. If you have a solid foundation and you have knowledge on trauma and you are understanding that these spirits really represent different aspects of you, they are their own beings, but they mirror different aspects of you, then realistically, this can be a very co-creative path of self-development that is extremely tangible, extremely powerful, and will really help you integrate some of the deepest portions of your unconscious mind that you didn't even realize existed. So, a very powerful path, but one that requires a lot of consideration, and particularly from an initiatory standpoint, a real consideration as to whether it's something that you actually want and whether it's something that you are willing to dedicate your life to, ultimately. Because once you start on this process, even just through invocation, to be honest with you, it can be like this. Once you start with this process, it's a bit like a roller coaster. Yeah, you start it, you can't really get off. You know, once the illusion has been deconstructed, you can't reconstruct it. Yeah, you can reconstruct a different one and re-traumatize yourself in the process, but once that illusion has been deconstructed, you know, you kind of just have to go with it and relax into it. Surrender is the key with these energies, and understand that they have your best interest at heart and they ultimately want you to grow, purely because they get energy from that growth, they get energy from that evolution, and ultimately they want you to find your full potential and your true power from within your physical body. So I think this is just about everything that I needed to speak about in today's video. If you have any questions, please get in touch. I have two very powerful membership programs that are very suitable for helping you build a solid foundation for this work and actually teach you how to interact with these energies in a safe and sustainable way. I have a premium membership, which gives you direct access to me, as well as powerful initiatory systems and practices. And I also have a Patreon, which is a little bit more passive, which has different mentoring programs on there, but can also give you access to a lot of exclusive content relating to this subject exactly. Links are in the description. But for now, thank you guys. If this video was helpful to you, hit like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.